Welcome to the Redvee TV Show, supported by Chapel House Cars for the 2024 season. This week, joined once again by Peter Elder. Good evening, Peter. You okay?
Good evening, Dave. Yeah, and good evening to the many legions of Redvee fans watching. Yes, great to be back. Thanks for having me. All good. Looking forward to another weekend of exciting rugby league. Another double header at the TWS as well.
Absolutely. We'll start off with a derby, which we'll get on to that at the end of the show. But the main event this Friday evening is the visit of Catalan. Now, Peter, I do need to ask, second row or prop, where would you prefer to play?
I think if I'm being realistic, it's probably prop, but I'll probably,
Would you have a go in the halves?
Well, everyone else has, I think. I think given the level of fitness, I'll probably do, less minutes than that boy for Wiggins at Palliacina used to play about 7 or 8 minutes. I'll maybe even go less than him, and that'll include walking off and walking on as well.
So we'll get on to the reason we're talking about it, because everybody is injured. We've got Alex Walmsley out for 4 months. Jake Wingfield, 4 months. I think that's conservative, given Jake said himself on his Instagram he'll be back next season. Matt Whitley, 3 months with his shoulder injury. 2 months out for Joe Batch with ankle ligament damage. 6 weeks out for Morgan Knowles, who's had surgery on his groin. And a month out for captain Johnny Lomax, which leaves us, Peter, with this as the squad for the week. Jack Welsby, captain.
Yeah, I'm delighted for Jack. I think a lot of people might have looked at that and perhaps thought, Tommy Mack might get the armband for longevity. Perhaps someone even like a big Curtis Sirenen character, because he is a kind of leader in terms of he kind of leads by example. He is a popular guy, in the squad as well. But listen, Jack's obviously got the temperament. We've got to trust Wello. Wello was a captain himself in the same position. If anyone knows about doing that, we've got to trust him. So delighted for Jack. He's a local boy, Saints at heart, and I'm sure he'll go well on Friday night. Still a pretty good squad. Just to touch on what we're talking about, all the guys that are injured. Obviously, there's a few of them, like a Big Al's, but I think certainly more than a month into he's 4 months out. But what it tells me is the depth of the squad is better than perhaps we thought. And come the business end of the season, as long as touchwood we don't get any other injuries, we're going to be in a pretty good position when it comes to having a good squad available. But that it's not ideal in terms of particularly props and second rows, but I'll tell you, that's a good squad. Other teams missing players of that calibre would not be as stacked as we are.
I think the important thing is we've just got to keep churning out these 2 points by hook or crook. If you can get the points on the board and just keep aiming for that top 2 finish. And with Wigan playing Warrington this weekend, someone is going to drop points there. And it'll leave Saints in a pretty decent position ahead of a week off.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, assuming we get the job done on Friday night. Obviously, Catalan are not in a great run of form themselves. They're got a lot of bodies out as well. They're perhaps not at full strength, but a recent record against them is not great. We're certainly due a victory over them, and at home, you'd have to make Saints slight favourites, even with all those guys missing. But we want to finish in the top 2. I think last season exemplified why that is probably required if we want to get back to Old Trafford again. A tough away semi-final. Having had a tough quarter-final, if you like, against Warrington last year, having home games is I think imperative. I think if we finish outside the top 2, I wouldn't have, any money on us making Old Trafford, to be brutally honest.
Yeah, I think last season showed if you wanna get to Old Trafford and have a good tilt of it, you need that top two finish to give yourself
Yeah.
a home semi-final and give yourself a decent chance. I didn't quite realise how bad a form Catalan have been in over the last month or so. They've lost 3 out of 4, and the one they did win was against Leeds at home, which doesn't really count, does it?
Well, we don't really want to make that statement. Obviously, after last week, I think, and our victory over Leeds last week certainly counted. All three of them, including obviously the academy and the women's team as well. So I think any win, all joking apart, is certainly has to be chalked up on the board. But I know what you mean about Catalan. A few weeks back, they scored, I think, only 2 points away against Wigan. I think the same away against Lee.
It was eight against Wigan, 38
Eight,
loss,
yes,
and
yeah,
a 30 points to 2 defeat against
two,
Lee, which is probably
yeah,
the biggest shock, given that Lee have been in pretty poor form this year.
yeah.
You hope that the travel sickness is going to catch once again with this Catalan side. And I've seen somebody saying they don't see us scoring many points, but it is fair to say we've scored 329 points so far over 12 games. Catalan have also struggled in the attacking category, only 250 points. Saints currently average 7.7 points more per game. So as bad as people like to point out our attackers, and it's fair to say there has been issues with it not firing at times.
Yeah.
Catalan are no better.
Well, I think that's a fair point, and it's obviously that the statistics you've mentioned there are obviously maybe might point towards a prediction later on. But yeah, I mean, our record hasn't been great, but you have to obviously caveat that by the last few games we've played against Catalan. They've been stronger. Look at the games last year; they were very, very, narrow margins of victory, but they had a much, much stronger squad. At that point, they don't have that now. They are struggling to score a lot of points. Perhaps we're jinxing things ahead of Friday night, but certainly Saints attacked the last few games, albeit Leeds weren't great. Cast were even worse, but you've still got to do the job and stick the points on. We've seen Saints, certainly at times last season, against the lesser lights, not rack up the points. But we seem to be learning the lessons and kind of taking the foot off the handbrake and really going for it, that's just why we're top of the table at the moment.
I'm just looking. Catalan have beat us the last 5 played us, which is quite a run, isn't it? Given how strong Saints have been over the last couple of years, Saints have won 25 of 45 against Catalan, and Catalan obviously winning 20. Since Catalan have come into Super League, obviously many years ago now, they've always provided quite a test for us, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some interesting battles, both home and away. An interesting fact, which I'm sure you know anyway, Dave, as a learned scholar of all things Saints, is that Catalan were the last opposition to win at Knowsley Road and the first opposition to win at what was Langtree Park. There you are, a little bit of a stato moment for you there. But yeah, there's been games where the form book's been upset. Obviously, 25 wins to 20. There's no, it's not a big kind of difference there over 45 games. A few of them at the start. I remember back in 2006, Saints sent, I think, under 13s over, and I think they got a couple of guys out of retirement to pull on the boots that day as well, and still only lost in the last minute. That was, I think, the week before Wembley, if I remember correctly, in 2006. But they have provided some really, really tough games, and we've had some hard to swallow defeats against them. But we've also, handed them a few scalpings. I remember coming down in 2019 with some other fellow Scots for a 50 points to 10, I think it was, when we had quite a few players out. Matty Costello hat-trick that afternoon as well, Sunday afternoon game, where we tore them apart and we thought it might be a really, really tough afternoon. But I think Friday night could be one of those games where both teams will play more, I think, free-flowing, because perhaps we're missing a lot of our bigger blokes and they're not as physical or as stacked as they once were. So you might see a bit more free-flowing rugby there, rather than the grind people might have predicted at the start of the season.
Yeah. High scoring affair, 48-46. Hopefully in our favour. Now, given we're going to have plenty of changes this week, and obviously Johnny Lomax leaving the field last week with a fractured hand, which is probably going to keep him out for a month or so. I don't see us changing the back line. I don't see us moving Jack Wellesby from one.
No.
And I think the obvious answer is Moses and Bai is going to play in the halves alongside Lewis.
We've got enough.
I think we can pretty much say the back line, assuming there's no injuries that we don't yet know about, is going to be Wellesby, Makinson, Blake, Percival, Harrell, and Bai and Lomax.
Yeah, I think obviously with Johnny missing, I think actually that the Dodd and Bai partnership worked actually quite well last week. Which they're both left-footed kickers as well. But I think there's no point making any other changes. We're going to have enough changes in the pack. You don't want to try and mess around, moving Jack in the halves, maybe bringing Benno in at one. Other changes that are changes for the sake of changes. I think that's how the back line finished last week. It didn't do a bad job, let's be honest.
I think it potentially gives us a look at next season as well for Moses going into the halves. Because if, as we believe, we know George Whitby's going to step up into the squad next season, as is Harry Robertson. Now, it's going to probably come a year too soon for them to be playing in the halves on a regular basis for us. But if George Whitby is supposedly going to be the answer in 2026, you're going to potentially look at using Moses as a bridge next season, because who are you going to get in if you don't want to bring someone in for 2 or 3 years who could potentially stand in Whitby's way?
Well, that's the thing. No one's going to take a 1-year contract knowing they've not got an opportunity.
Jordan Abdul's on the market.
Yeah, and especially if they don't, unless it's going to be someone coming over just want to make a fast buck, and we don't want to get involved in anything like that, to be brutally honest. And if those lads, as you mentioned, if they are thought to be ready by 2026, if their progression continues, and let's be honest, we've got to trust Derek Trainer and the academy coaches and management, because they've not let us down so far. Then I think if we can go with Johnny and Moses in 2025 in the halves, I think they'll guide us around, pretty much all right with Jack at full back as well. But as you say, you don't want to throw young guys in before they're ready, and that's one thing that Saints do. They still give guys an opportunity when they're young, but not before they're ready. And the progress that these guys seem to be making, by all accounts, is steady but very, very positive. So something to look forward to.
So coming into the squad this week, Leon Cowan and Jake Burns, 2 youngsters yet to make their debuts, replacing the injured Johnny Lomax and Joe Batchelor. It's the forwards where it gets interesting, doesn't it? Now, I've tried to look at what I see the team being as this week. I think we'll try and keep things steady. So I've got Matty Lees and Sione to carry on starting at prop. Daryl Clark at 9, Curtis Sironen in the second row. I've put James Bell in as playing second row with Ben Davis at 13, given where he played against for Swinton the other week. I wonder whether you could potentially swap Bell and Ben Davis around. And then that would leave a bench of George Delaney, Noah Stevens, who will retain his place, Sam Royal, I expect to come in and come off the bench. And then your big call for me is whether you bring Iggy Parsi in, and because you have 3 props on the bench, you could limit his time to the last 15, 20 minutes. Or if it's too soon for him, you probably go John Bennison as a utility player, a utility back. But do you need a utility back against Catalan, or are you better just having that little bit more grunt in the forwards?
Yeah, I mean, there's arguments for both, but given our injury run of late, you wouldn't bet against it. Although, if we are starting Ben Davis, either second row or loose forward, I think he has good enough hands, good enough control. Where playing at 13, I think he could excel. And of course, is another short range kicking option near the opposition line as well, though he does have a good big boot as well. The other option might potentially be, do you have Johnny Vaughan in the bench? Who can play second row, he can play in the centre as well. Because obviously, we spoke about not wanting to upset the apple cart, making unnecessary changes. If we do get any backs injuries, he could slot in there, or rather than moving Ben Davis and making 3 changes when you've got to cover 1 injury. But then again, you're going very inexperienced there. But then again, if they're in the squad, they must be considered good enough. And if they're good enough to be in the Saints squad, then they must be good enough to be able to be thrown in. Remember Warrington last season, where we thought, we're up against it here, and we hammered them, and with a very inexperienced team that night. So, it'd be interesting to see. Personally, I would like to see Big Iggy back, but perhaps, would you think, hold him off to playing London away?
If you're going to play,
couple of weeks?
If you've got a reserve game on Saturday where you're going to play him, and listen, I know the standard of opposition's completely different, but is it more beneficial to give him 15, 20 minutes against Catalan than half an hour in the reserves? I don't know. They'll have to weigh that up. Paul Caswell made a really interesting point on our Twitter, and I think it's very valid. They've said, those that love to slate Ben Davis will understand his value in the next couple of months. So,
yes,
he's been 18th man quite a bit this year. Is he in our starting 17? Well, obviously not, given what we've seen so far. But he'd get a lot of games elsewhere in Super League. And given the amount of injuries we've got, to be able to still call upon someone like Ben Davis to come into the side, he'll more than show his worth. And this is the importance of a 25-man squad. Not everyone can be a superstar, but the players who are on the fringe who can come in when needed are absolutely invaluable.
Well, that's it. I'd also include Sam Royal in that as well, because he's a guy who's, I think, incredibly unlucky. He's never let Saints down when he's played. He's like Ben, solid, unspectacular, puts the head down, nose to the grindstone, does the hard work, so that the more flashier players, if you like, can excel.
Rumours of a Huddersfield move next year for Sam Royal as well.
I mean, I'd be sad to see him go, but I think for him, he probably needs to be playing. I think that would be the perfect club for him, because he'll get his opportunity. Whatever people think about Ian Watson and the style of rugby, if indeed Ian Watson's still there, and I hope he is. But I think Sam would do a really, really good job. As I say, he doesn't let Saints down. As for Ben, I think it's possibly to his detriment that he's actually so comfortable in a number of positions, rather than nailing down a particular berth. It's great as a squad player. I think if you can stick him in the halves, he's played there before. Obviously, centre. He can play loose forward, second row, which means in a time like this, as Paul correctly mentioned, with a number of injuries, he's going to be vital. Coming off the bench, switching positions, and if it comes to it, potentially kicking goals. He's not a 80% goal kicker, but even if he's 65, 70% one day kicking goals, that might be enough. The fact that he can do it is potentially going to be a bonus, because it has been something that's caused us a few problems. But yeah, I mean, again, as you say, at most other Super League clubs, Ben Davis would be a regular in the 17, much like Sam Royal.
Squad then, Peter. Changes for them as well. 4 players missing out: Arthur Romano, Mike McMeekin, who's a big blow, Paul Seguier, and Alrix da Costa miss out. Coming into the squad, Fuad Yaha, Lone Castano, Guillermo Asporo Biche, and Yassim Bel Abdesalem. That's
not bad. That's as good as I could have done. Well played. Good job we didn't rehearse that or anything. I look at the squad there. Quite often yourself, and when you Kev are on, you look at the squad numbers down the right hand side, and there's that they are missing a few bodies there, particularly missing their 8, 9, 12. There's a few missing, a few kind of new faces, new names for us there. Fuad Yaha obviously caused us problems before. Theo, we know all about. Obviously did a great job when he was in the proper Redvee, not theirs. But I look at the rest of the team.
Well, Peter,
Ikevalu's all right.
there's only one team playing in a Redvee at Saints on Friday night.
Yes,
And
exactly. Exactly. Yes, we are back to black, as I think someone once sang.
Well, the club have said Saints will be playing in their popular away kit. It appears to me we've not worn it very much, and we've got plenty to sell.
Yes.
The cynic in me suggests that people should be in the club shop buying the away kit before the game so they can look like they're heroes on the terraces.
Absolutely right. I remember it was as well. I think someone else I think it was on one of the it might have been the Saints page when the score came out when they mentioned we're playing in black. And I had remembered this as well. That back in 2018 we had our change kit on against Catalan and a fairly comfortable victory. So hopefully that that brings us a little bit of luck. It's a good omen as well.
You know what? If it comes down to it that you're not wearing the away jersey enough because it's not clashing with opposition kits, I would do what the NFL do, and I would have you wear your home jersey at home, and you wear the away jersey away, unless you can't. And try and get pretty much equal wear out of both of them. Given that we change the kits every year, we essentially only play 13, 14 away games a year. I'd like to see it work like that. But yeah,
it's a tricky one because I'm obviously a wee bit older than yourself, and I'm going to reference one of our mutual friends, Dave Rigby, who might well be watching this later. He's perhaps a little bit like me, traditionalist, that thinks the teams, not just in rugby and football as well, wear change kits when it's unnecessary far too often. Maybe that's just old git speak, I don't know. But I understand the marketing aspect.
I get that in football where you're playing probably 23, 24 away games a year, so you'll get more opportunity. But in a sport like rugby league where you're playing such limited amounts of games and you want to change both kits every year, if you want to give fans the money worth, that's why I think you split it. But I very much see both arguments for it. But as it is, we're going to play in black at home. Maybe it's going to confuse Catalan.
Possibly. I think looking at the makeup of Super League anyway, there's a few teams like Catalan, Hull KR, Wigan, Salford, where Saints would naturally change anyway. So there's always options, and depending what type of kit Hull have as well, there's a lot more white in it. Sometimes Wakefield when they're in Super League, so there's plenty of opportunities for kits to change. But I quite like the black kit, if I'm honest. I always like a black or kind of dark blue Saints away kit is one I always look forward to, and one I'd always purchase. But listen, if the team wins in it, what does it matter what it looks like?
Right, what are we going for on Friday then, Peter? Saints win. Catalan win.
I can't say by 7.7, so I'll round it up and I'll say Saints by 8, going by the averages this season. I've probably nicked your prediction there. That's why I jumped in first. I think it'll be tight.
Peter, but
go on.
You're not doing this very scientifically, because
I don't do anything scientifically. Have you listened to me on here before?
You're failing to take into account that Saints have conceded 124 points and Catalan have conceded 168, which means over 12 games, Catalan have conceded on average 3.66 points more per game. And that's the 7.7. It's 11.3. Saints should be winning by 11.
Or rounding it up by 12.
I'll go to 12.
Well, you take 12, I'll take 8, and if we split the difference, if we win by 10, then we're both happy.
Listen, we speak about it so often on here. The fact that we'll go into the game on Friday night and you can't pick the winner with confidence is what we need in the sport.
Absolutely. I remember speaking about this, a number of years ago with some of the family down in St Helens, and a couple of things I've saying this. When Saints, like 2006, for example, it was a case of turning up at Knowsley Road, and it wasn't a case of, are we going to win today? It was like, how much were we going to win by today? And the atmosphere at times was quite subdued because of that, even against the likes of Wigan, although they were relegation fodder that year without Stuart Fielding's perfectly legal transfer. Still digging that up. but whereas a game like Friday night, although there's not a big away support, but if it's a tight game, you'll see the Saints fans get right behind the lads. If the game's level, or if we're only a couple of points in front and need another score to clinch it, that in itself brings more excitement, more tension, and brings more people in, I think. There was a run when we were at Wembley a few years in a row, and someone said in a group I was with, might not go to Wembley this year, I'll wait and go next year. And I think, how do you know we're going to be there next year? You can't take things for granted. We had a great run for a number of years. We didn't make Old Trafford last year, and I think that sweated the appetite, I think, amongst the players and amongst the fans. We want to get back. We're desperate to get back. And I think games like this are the ones that are going to decide whether we can do it or whether we will probably just miss out. So any win on Friday is a good win.
This is one that it's a real, I won't say a 4-pointer, because obviously if we win, we will go 4 points ahead of Catalan with a superior points difference, which essentially is worth another 2 points. So you're essentially 3 wins ahead of Catalan after 13 games. Obviously, lose, you level on points, and it's all to play for. So it's a real important game this on Friday night. But before it, Peter, we have the women in the derby against Wigan. One change to Saints squad. Rebecca Rotherham comes in for Rachel Woozy. Saints have won the last 7 against Wigan. Last defeat against them 2018 in the playoffs. Going for 8 in a row. Can you see anything but another Saints win?
Well, hopefully the girls can pull off another win. Like, obviously, watching the game last week, Leeds, gave it as good as they got. And another night, Leeds might well have won that. But the Saints' defence was absolutely ridiculous last week. Sure, we made a few mistakes coming off our own line. Sure, there was 1 or 2 decisions by the ref. Not going to bag the guy, but 1 or 2 which contributed to being under pressure, like the try that was conceded, for example. But we'll not go into that. But
we talk about when we talk about the culture of the club and like how Saints play across like the age groups in the men's team, you can almost see that defensive effort transfer into the women's team as well, and probably Patty Smith and coaching across both the men's team and the women's has probably got a lot to say for that as well.
Yeah, you use the word culture, and that's the important one there. It's not just the Saints, the men's team play one way, the women's team play another way, the academy play whatever way they play. It's all the same way, and that's about an attitude and a togetherness. Defense. I remember someone once saying to me, defense is an attitude. If you have the right attitude, your defensive line speed will be good. You'll tackle hard. You'll make sure you don't let down the player next to you. You'll cover them, and that happened a lot last week with the women's team. On another day, Leeds maybe win that by 10 or 12 points, but by Saints' defence last week being so unbelievable, that's what won Saints the game. I know Wigan have had a decent start to the season as well, so I don't think it'll be straightforward. But if Saints' defence is anywhere resembling last week's effort, then I expect that Saints will win the match in the end reasonably comfortably.
Yeah, Wigan top of the table after 4 rounds, unbeaten. Leeds, Saints, and York all with 1 loss to the names. So real chance for Saints to make a bit of a statement and get to the top of the table this weekend.
Yes.
And lastly, Peter, before we finish, there is a forum on the 12th of June at the Percival Suite on Ruskin Drive. It'll be hosted by Pete Emmett. That's him on the right of Kevin Sinfield. Just in case you mix him up with Big Al. Big Al and Louis McCarthy Scarsbrook. And it's all in aid of Al's close friend, Joe Thompson, the former Rochdale footballer. Had Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2013 and 2017. Overcome those battles, but is now fighting it for a 3rd time. So this will fund his ongoing treatment. Tickets £20, include supper, and can be purchased from Dave Howarth on the number on the screen. There will be a raffle and auction items. Capacity is limited to 150. Please be quick. It's always a top night at the Percival Suite at Ruskin. That's where we host the Redvee forums. And this is another real important one, which I'm sure Al, Joe Thompson and everyone involved, they will appreciate your support.
Absolutely, and obviously, having been to Saints Hospitality a couple of times, Pete Emmett is absolutely an outstanding host, and obviously this particular cause as well. I mean, it's a young guy, that's going through a really, really tough time. But we say to people, if you can't go, if you're able to perhaps get hold of Dave and maybe put a raffle or auction prize from your work, or if you have a piece of sports memorabilia that you think, is sitting around in a cupboard, I'm sure Dave would be delighted to have extra items there that could raise a wee bit of money and help this fella and his family out, and which is a tough battle and something that certainly puts sport into a very stark perspective. But if you can get along, shell out. It'll be a good, entertaining night. I'm sure it'll be a very good laugh. It won't be morose because of the guy's condition. It'll be a good laugh, be a great night. But you're also making a hell of a difference. So if you can get along, folks, please do.
Yeah, and best wishes to Joe Thompson.
Absolutely.
In his battle. Right, Peter, done. Let's hope we're celebrating a win on Friday evening.
Well, let's hope so. And then the boys have got a couple of weeks off before a few away games on the bounce as well. So hopefully that will get people along to the TWS on Friday night, because it'll be in about a month, 5 weeks, I think, till the next home game after that, which is Cass on the 5th of July, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the pitch will get dug up this weekend,
yes.
apparently, with our Premier League surface being laid down by our wonderful friends at Liverpool FC.
Oh, that must sting. There he is. Would the real Dave Lyon please stand up? Yeah, but listen,
we'll take their money all day.
Whatever brings in extra revenue, extra people going into the stadium, extra focus on the stadium and the club is all well and good. Talking of the stadium, I'll be back down there for the Warrington game with our good mutual friend Wilf Marshall. We're coming down for the Warrington game on the 19th. Like it or not, we shall be there. So
we've got some players back.
Yes, well, hopefully by then, looking at who's out, Johnny and Morgs might be back by that time. You would hopefully, might be a bit early for Matt Whitley, but who knows? And hopefully no one else is out is the important thing, I think.
Get past this week, and then obviously we've got a week off. We've got London, Salford, Cass coming up, and we'll stay on track. But this is the big one this week. Right, Peter, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, as always.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And we'll catch you for the fan reaction on Friday night. Catch you soon.